If you grew up in the 90s or 2000s, you've definitely dreamed of getting sucked into a computer to save the world. Legendary franchises like Pokemon and Digimon dominated our childhoods, using the exact same magic formula. Misfit kids who find pocket monsters and become humanity's only hope. It's the kind of irresistible nostalgia that instantly hooks you. But times have changed. Nowadays, nobody cares about giant CRT monitors anymore. The smartphone screen is what dictates our lives. And riding that exact wave is the series we're going to dissect today. Digimon Universe, App Monsters. It's basically the essence of the classic Digimon we all know and love, but revamped for the Wi-Fi generation. Here, the creatures are literally the apps you use all day long, from your GPS to cat videos. But don't let the flashy colors fool you. Behind this mobile game facade lies an insane plot about artificial intelligence manipulating humanity and cyber betrayals that will straight up short-circuit your brain. Our useless future protagonist Haru is messing around on his phone when a weird digital critter named Gatchmon decides they're partners and jumps out of the screen to haunt his life. Earlier, the kid was drooling over his crush Ai and ended up taking a ball straight to the face because he has zero reflexes, proving he has the agility of a potato. His best friend Yujin decides to walk the poor guy home, while a bizarre analysis system judges Haru as a potential protagonist. The system hacks the streetlights to separate the two, and a needy vending machine drops an app drive right into Haru's lap before flashing a sinister message. At home, Gatchmon gets attention-starved and begs Haru to shove his thick chip into the device to materialize him, but Haru refuses because he's not an idiot. Meanwhile, his mom's messaging app glitches out thanks to an infected monster named Mesamon, who starts leaking embarrassing photos of Haru all over the internet. Running from the humiliation, he stumbles upon the creature in an AR field but stands there trembling in fear while Gatchmon gets beaten to a pulp. Realizing there's no running away, Haru finally puts on his protagonist pants, shoves the chip into the app drive slot, and aprializes his partner. The battle is a one-sided beatdown until they search for the enemy's weakness and discover the most lethal tactic in the modern universe, leaving him on red. By ignoring the monster, the damage is cancelled, allowing Gatchmon to beat the crap out of him and purify the virus. Haru snatches the defeated monster's chip while the voyeuristic cameraman snaps some pics before vanishing. The monitoring system finally accepts Haru as the official protagonist, while his little buddy Yujin watches him with a glowing red eye, giving off major "I'm going to try to assassinate you in the future" vibes. A nerdy background character named Watson uses a GPS to find the fastest way home and ends up being guided straight into a dark alley, where a mutant app named Navimon is waiting to traumatize him. The next morning, Haru and his portable digital encyclopedia Gatchmon find Watson completely wrecked at his crush's bookstore, whining that he was attacked by a wild dog. Since the girl is missing, Haru rubs his two brain cells together and concludes that an infected monster is playing demonic Google Maps with the city. As they investigate, Gatchmon vomits exposition about the L virus and the evil artificial intelligence Leviathan, but just remembering the name makes the bug crash like Windows 95, requiring a hard reboot. A lost delivery guy reveals the culprit, Navimon, who flees to the AR field. Yujin calls to say he found the missing girl, leaving Haru free to unleash his pet onto the battlefield. Navimon starts shooting homing arrows, forcing Gatchmon to search for a weakness and conclude that the best tactic is to spin like an out-of-control top. Haru app links Gatchmon's strength with Mesamon's ghost, allowing his partner to wiggle through the air, dodge the tracking, and deliver a beatdown to the damn GPS, purifying the poor guy. Just as he steals another chip, the paparazzi cameraman appears out of nowhere to take some pictures and blind Gatchmon with a camera flash. In absolute panic, Haru tries to use the GPS power to help, but accidentally smashes both souls together in the device, forcing a bizarre fusion that creates the hulking Dogatchmon. The giant Dogatchmon blocks the voyeuristic photographer's attack and kicks him out of the arena before deflating and spitting Gatchmon and Navimon onto the ground, completely exhausted. Our protagonist pockets the fusion chip while Navimon swears loyalty to him, causing a pathetic jealousy fit from Gatchmon, who can't stand sharing his master's attention. Later, Haru discovers that Watson's min-maxed account in an online game got reset to level 1, destroying his already depressing social life. Haru tracks down the culprit, rolls Roleplay Mon and chases him to the school, which has been turned into the dungeon of a failed 3-year-old RPG that went bankrupt in 3 months because it was ridiculously hard. With zero patience to play fair, Haru pulls up an online walkthrough and cheats his way through the entire dungeon, sending the monster into a deep depression. Roleplay Mon cries that players would rather read guides than explore his mediocre little world, and after reliving the trauma of being humiliated by better games, he embraces the evil virus and grows to a giant size. Trying to solve everything with brute force, Haru attempts the fusion again, but the lack of sync between the two jealous pets creates the useless Tsukasi-mon, who is literally trampled and dismantled in 2 seconds. When all seems lost, Haru uses his protagonist's smooth-talking skills to stroke the monster's fragile ego, claiming he found the dungeon super fun to explore. The free therapy works so well that Roleplay Mon purifies himself, revealing he is one of the legendary 7-code Appmon needed to face the final boss, Leviathan. While Haru gets a special tablet to store these 7 kings, a generic edgy kid and his weird monster hack another creature on the other side of town, promising to destroy our hero's dreams in an extremely dramatic fashion. Halloween takes over the city, and while normal people are dressing up and getting wasted, our useless protagonist prefers to stay locked inside reading a book about artificial intelligence to try and understand Leviathan. Gatchmon, who has way better priorities, annoys him by begging to go out and leech candy off the streets. Haru snaps and kicks his own digital partner out of the house, allowing the creature to put on a pumpkin costume and use his tiny appearance to extort sweets from innocent adults. But Cameramon, the season's official stalker, takes advantage of the temporary divorce and sets up an ambush, demanding the app drive under orders from Big Boss Leviathan. Haru soon feels the weight of his own incompetence and receives a forged photo of his kidnapped pet. He runs to the meeting spot where extras dressed as men in black try to extort the device. Our hero tests the cheap Gatchmon knockoff with simple questions, and when the hologram gives up too easily, Haru realizes it's a fake, since his real partner is way too dumb and stubborn to accept defeat. Haru makes a run for it, forcing Cameramon to initiate a global manhunt, turning every security camera into his personal gossip network and offering a bounty to any citizen who catches the kid. When the goons finally grab the protagonist, the real Gatchmon pops out of nowhere and snatches the device back. They flee into the AR field, but Cameramon fuses his body with Shotmon, becoming the elite sniper Scopemon. Seeing that things are about to get ugly, Haru swallows his fear of creating another failed fusion and summons the gigantic Dogatchmon. Scopemon acts like a cowardly FPS camper, using the surveillance network to snipe from afar. Haru, however, finally uses the few brain cells he has to map out the camera's blind spots. Dogatchmon crawls through the shadows and crushes the sniper from behind with a brutal strike. Haru almost grabs the loot, but a thief named Mienu Mon blatantly snatches the chip right from under them before vanishing. The day of terror ends with the 2 idiots making peace while clogging their veins with sugar. Our moronic hero nearly destroys his own legendary equipment by spilling juice on it, getting a massive scolding from his pocket monster. Their attention soon shifts to the TV, where they discover that the unbearable new IT idol, Eri, is parading around with a blue app drive. Determined to recruit the girl, they break into a TV station in Roppongi, with Haru brilliantly stuffed into a fluffy dog costume to bypass security, while Gatchmon is simply ignored for being a dwarf. After watching Eri spew arrogance in front of the cameras, the duo invades her dressing room. As soon as the idol sees Gatchmon, the bratty girl mask drops, and she reveals her own hyperactive digital partner, Dokamon, who is outraged to find out he's not the only monster in the world. Before they can finish their exchange of insults, all fashion apps crash thanks to Dressmon, a stylist infected by the L virus. They are dragged into the virtual combat zone, where the enemy humiliates our heroes by forcing women's clothing onto them and shooting explosive needles. Hiding behind a barricade, Dokamon cries with envy over not having a physical body, begging Eri to pull him out of the screen. The girl finally decides to be useful, apprializes the buff monster, and summons a bizarre floating controller to mash the buttons. Dokamon pummels Dressmon with a flurry of punches and frees Gatchmon from the textile humiliation. Haru then fuses the monster's powers, giving Gatchmon gigantic fists to disfigure the enemy and purify the pest. With the stylist chip in the protagonist's pocket, Eri dumps her tragic backstory of being a lonely girl who found her magic device in an arcade claw machine, proving that destiny is just a random joke. They part ways as great friends, but in the shadows, a weirdo named Ray watches the idol's video, smiling and thinking the game has finally gotten interesting. Eri's brilliant idol career takes a knockout blow when she tries to do a food review on live television and embarrasses herself colossally by choking on her words. Her manager orders her to study the Mon app, so she drags Dokimon along to meet Haru and Gatchmon at a bookstore, leaving a background nerd drooling in the distance. After a quick search, they find out that the food critic is literally a spy digital monster who emerges from the shadows at that exact moment. The girl demands the yellow creature teach her the secrets of tasting, but Mon hijacks her app drive and demands a physical body in exchange. Eri then decides to torture the bug's taste buds by whipping up some radioactive takoyaki, hoping for a miracle to save her TV image. Without even letting the food touch his teeth, the critic analyzes the atrocity visually and shatters her dreams with a brutal review before walking away in disgust. Eri accepts her culinary mediocrity and goes to read the app's reviews, only to discover the data is being wiped off the map. Everyone accuses the fat monster of eating the internet out of hunger. Upon entering the virtual dimension, they find out the real culprit isn't the stressed critic, but Gomimon, an infected pile of trash deleting everything in sight. Mon himself had already taken a beating trying to protect his precious reviews. When the digital garbage man destroys the data right to their faces, fury takes over. Dokimon and Mon decide to combine their body mass and fuse into the colossal sumo wrestler Dosukomon. With no time for the protagonist's failed strategies, the new abomination crushes the trash monster with a single devastating slap. The pile of scrap leaves behind an ultra-rare 7-code chip, which Eri throws in Haru's face with the utmost disdain. In the end, Mon finally swallows the girl's octopus balls, only to confirm that sending that down the hatch is just as horrible as the face of the person who made it. Haru and his useless friends discover a budget YouTube knockoff called AppTube, where the king of the virtual crown is an elementary school brat named Astra. Acting like a professional stalker, Haru tracks the kid to his school and commits the ultimate crime of calling him by his real name, offending the mini-influencer's fragile dignity. But when the brat sees Gatchmon, he forgets the offense, shows off his own shiny app drive, and introduces his musical partner, Muzimon. Out of nowhere, the kid runs off in a panic because he has a schedule to keep, and Haru continues the chase all the way to a bizarrely gigantic mansion. There, we find out the little king of likes is actually the preppy heir to a prestigious tea ceremony school, who has to beg his dad on his knees just for 30 measly minutes to record his videos. But as soon as he starts recording, his timer is magically deleted from existence. The culprit is Watchmon, a walking wristwatch infected by the L virus who is messing up global time zones just for fun. They dive into an AR field to hunt down the time monster, but the magic clock starts exposing Astra's dramatic rich boy secrets. We see his dark past of being crushed by the pressure of serving tea for the rest of his life until the day he found AppTube, truly smiled, and received an app drive delivered by a mysterious drone. Muzimon begged him to bust a move and dance to the floor, and although Astra tried to act like a modest lord, the urge to groove was stronger, activating his inner power. In the present, Muzimon tries to punch the clock but ends up frozen in time. Gatchmon then uses his search engine brain and cites the Greenwich Observatory, the supreme god of every clock in the universe. The monster panics, thinking he disappointed his stone idol, and breaks the time spell out of sheer anxiety. With the help of some DJ turntables summoned out of thin air, Muzimon disintegrates and purifies the dirty clock. Haru just sits in his armchair and watches the T-Boy's latest video like a good subscriber. The idol Eri is wasting her breath interviewing some guy named Seijiro, the internet's new king of stylish challenges, who completely humiliated Astra's subscriber count. The T-Boy spirals into absolute despair over the loss of engagement, while Haru and Eri notice that Astra's original videos are being swapped with creepy deepfakes online. In a pathetic attempt to go viral at any cost, Astra comes up with the genius idea of recording the symphonies of his own intestines to make fart music. That's exactly the level of decadence this show has reached. An audio recording appmon, named Recomon, emerges from the virtual sewer, offering his high-definition services to capture every gaseous nuance of the kid with the best sound quality possible. Having a shred of self-respect, Musimon refuses to take part in this flatulence fest and jumps ship. Astra proudly drops the video, but his reputation melts faster than ice on asphalt. Regretting trading his dignity for invisible likes, he goes to cry his eyes out to Musimon and rediscovers the magic of making videos just for fun. Haru and Eri finally show up to clean up the mess, revealing that a video player named Dogamon is the real one responsible for faking internet content. Astra then mashes the fart boy and his musical pet together into a bizarre fusion, creating Mediamon with a pathetic power level of 5,800. Instead of using noxious gases, Mediamon takes Dogamon's own corrupted film, shoves it in his face, and purifies the L virus through audio-visual blunt trauma. To close out the freak show on a high note, the group discovers that the perfect Seijiro never existed. He was just an artificial avatar spat out by Mienumon to farm fame. Eri is forced to interview the fart boy instead of her fake idol, but the two mix worse than water and burnt motor oil. The Appmons look at their 3 collected app drives and decide to toss the global threat in the trash to organize a useless ranking tournament. The reason for this entire circus is a Wikipedia edit war between Gatchmon and Navamon, acting like 2 teens with no social life fighting on a forum at 3 a.m. The competition boils down to an Olympics of who can cheat better, featuring races, arts, and the noble sport of digging holes in the dirt. The event judge, MC Mon, is literally a recycled Musimon asset with a palette swap, insisting the lazy resemblance is pure coincidence. Even Roleplay Mon reveals that his mystical, sacred 7 code light has an on-off switch, killing whatever magic was left. Eri watches the whole thing with the same will to live as a zombie on a Monday morning, but Gatchmon has the audacity to pretend this whole circus will help defeat the big bad, making Eri question what the hell Leviathan even is. Tudomon, the useless tutorial mascot, steps in to vomit a lecture on artificial intelligence, explaining that Appmons are formed purely of data. He warns that a rogue super AI could easily crush all of humanity, implying that their pet monsters could turn into the Terminator whenever they feel like it. Just as the 3 main idiots go back to their ego-stroking match and prep for the grand climax of this mediocre tournament, Hackmon invades the server and beats the crap out of absolutely everyone without breaking a sweat. Stepping on the competitors laid out on the floor, the invader warns that the AR fields are just a trailer for the apocalypse Leviathan has prepared for the real world. He rubs it in their faces that this entire group of losers is way too weak for a real war. With oppressive displays of power and dark glances exchanged with the mysterious Ray, the kids go into an absolute panic, fully convinced they just got humiliated by the final boss's strongest lackey. The little gang of potato IQ protagonists falls for the most obvious trap in the digital world because they can't resist a warm pool and free snacks. Ray, that weird edgelord kid, set up the trap by faking a girl's get-together full of gossip and karaoke because deep down he's just an antisocial nerd who tried way too hard to throw the perfect party before robbing them. His accomplice, Mailmon, is so incompetent at hiding his bad intentions that the whole crew just assumes he's a terrible host. But since water is wet and the vibes are good, these morons decide to ignore the danger. Even Gatchmon smells something fishy, making it the first time the protagonist's partner has more than 2 working brain cells. When the charade finally ends, Ray reveals his true intentions and appealizes Raydramon, showing he didn't come to play in the water. The cybernetic dragon delivers a monumental beatdown, running over Dogachmon, Dosukomon, and Mediamon like he's squashing bugs on a speeding truck's windshield. While the 3 heroes eat dust and realize they aren't that tough, Ray reaches for the loot and rips 2 precious 7 code chips right off Gatchmon's controller. Even though Haru drops one of his patented emotional speeches, Ray solemnly ignores the bullshit. Everything screams that this goth kid is taking orders from the evil Leviathan, but the brutal incompetence of the plan itself makes it clear he's just a frustrated lone wolf stealing toys from random kids. The supposed heroes dive into the net ocean, which is nothing but an AR field dressed dressed up like a budget beach, complete with a lazy cabana. The water is pure code, so these idiots can breathe underwater without swallowing an ocean, and their clothes don't even get wet. Gatchmon puts on his B-movie villain sunglasses, acts like he owns the place, ordering drinks from Cookmon, and laughs at Dokamon and Musimon's dumbfounded faces as they discover this new world. Following the local gossip, they reach the island of Reviewmon and Kosomon, two monsters recycled from old assets just to pad the runtime. Reviewmon critiques the crew's outfits, calling Haru a walking anime cliché and calling Eri a fraud of an idol. Kosomon decides to sell info on Rei, but the price is exposing Eri's dirty laundry. Haru, Astra, and Dokamon sell out their friend in 2 seconds, shattering her tough girl image by revealing she's actually a sweetheart. The girl threatens to punch everyone in the face, but the fun ends when Sakusimon pops out of nowhere. This 2-bit villain who speaks in haikus traps the trio in a board game of totally inconsistent death traps. But who would have thought? Rei steps out of the shadows to save the losers, rubbing it in Haru's face that he doesn't work for the damn Leviathan. Of course, the edgelord didn't do it out of the kindness of his heart. He just wants to squeeze info out of Sakusimon. When Haru tries to play the meddling detective, Raidramon accidentally lets it slip that Rei is searching for his lost little brother. With the secret out in the open, Rei puts his arrogant jerk mask back on and sneaks off to cry in the dark. The time has come to sit down and swallow our favorite edgelord's tragic backstory. Rei lost his entire family and took on the role of mom to his little brother Hajime. He was so stubborn and proud that he hacked the government system just to avoid taking handouts from anyone. However, he got so addicted to solving useless puzzles that he forgot to pay attention to the brat, giving Leviathan a free pass to delete the kid from existence. The result is a traumatized teenager wandering the internet alone, pretending to be a tough villain. This lone wolf ends up captured by Sakusimon, who methodically trashes Raidramon and promises to put Rei in the ground. Eri and Astra, proving they actually have common sense, consider leaving the jerk to die and moving on with their lives. But Haru is suddenly infected by the dreaded Shunin protagonist syndrome. Defying all logic, the kid refuses to leave the guy who robbed them bleeding on the floor, storming into the arena to play hero. The battle explodes into an absurd visual chaos. Haru and Dogachmon take a beating first just to fill the dramatic quota, but soon get back up dusting themselves off. With reluctant help from the half-dead Rei, Dogachmon and Raidramon trigger an overpowered applink, gaining the power of the script to predict all of Sakusimon's moves and completely flatten the poor guy without mercy. Before the defeated villain can open his mouth to leak company secrets, Leviathan decides to permanently terminate his employment and disintegrates him mid-air. Utterly humiliated by being saved by the guy he constantly kicked around, Rei hands the 3-7 code chips over to Haru as payment for his miserable life, walking away empty-handed to resume his lonely depression. When a calendar monster named Calenda Ma simply deletes December 24th and 25th from all devices, the entire human race decides Christmas has been cancelled, proving that everyone is too lazy to just look at the sky and see it's still December. While the masses give up on life, Haru and his friends try to save the holiday from the local bookstore. In the midst of the chaos, Gatchmon decides to be a show-off and exposes the whole digital world to Ai, who conveniently already spent her time praying to an imaginary fairy in an indoor tree, so accepting invisible pocket monsters was a breeze. In the battle arena, Calendamon decides to fight by throwing dates in people's faces, turning August 1st into a weapon of psychological trauma to manipulate Eri and Tora. But Haru decides it's time to mess with the bug's mind too, activating his very first Super Aprialize in a completely unnecessary light show, just to humiliate the enemy and crush the calendar for good. With the villain defeated, the group exits the AR field and accidentally discovers a secret basement in the bookstore, scoring a free Batcave to stash their digital monsters away from the government's eyes. While Yujin continues to flash his Terminator eyes, Mianumon plots evil deeds in her corporate fortress, and Rei spends Christmas crying alone on a doorstep. Peace seems to reign, at least until the protagonist Appdrive decides to get possessed by a demon and starts screaming Haru's name in the middle of the night, ensuring he'll need to change his pants before dawn. The influencer duo Eri and Astra keep fighting for engagement and clout like two people with way too much free time, but somehow they agree to support Haru's plan to stop Leviathan, proving that even clout chasers have their limits. Ai is now part of the secret club, helping to set up a cyber surveillance system in their new Batcave, all while her dad remains completely oblivious to the high-stakes base of operations running right under his nose. The piece shatters when Puzzlemon decides to spread chaos in the most annoying way possible, forcing the entire population to solve puzzles just to do basic, everyday tasks. Imagine desperately trying to solve a Rubik's Cube just to use the toilet before soiling your pants. While the group tries to push through the villain's obstacles, Haru is the only one who actually uses his brain, activating his little monster's search and control functions. Eri and Astra, on the other hand, decide that thinking hurts too much and simply summon their Super Atmon to smash through the puzzles with sheer physical aggression, proving once again that brute force always beats intellect. Meanwhile, the lone anti-hero Rei finally realizes that hunting down teenagers isn't going to pay his bills and decides to focus on the real enemy. Across town, the villain continues to flaunt her power in the corporate tower, turning a suited-up CEO into a mere waiter to fetch her hot chocolate, all while calculating how to use the mega corporation to manipulate the human sheep en masse. The digital world decides to attack humanity's weakest point, sheep astrology. The fortune-telling Atmon, Tellermon, gets infected, and Eri immediately gets hooked on the predictions, forcing Astra to roll his eyes and deal with her superstitious nonsense. But the problem is that Tellermon isn't just throwing tarot cards in the dark. The creature has activated a bizarre artificial intelligence that analyzes global data to spit out terrifyingly accurate prophecies. When the dynamic duo goes after the rogue psychic, Astra refuses to accept his astrological destiny and throws his partner Mediamon into the fray to beat the crap out of the predictions. The chaos reaches such a ridiculous level that Eri has to dive in to save Astra's life from a deadly barrage of flying cucumbers. Yes, an almost assassination by vegetables. After this near-death experience in the produce aisle, the two finally swallow their pride and start treating each other like actual allies. While the influencers deal with killer salads, Haru chases Mienumon across the map, getting some unexpected help from Rei, who only showed up because he's desperate to siphon Tellermon's data cloud. Mienumon's grand debut on the battlefield is so fast and disappointing that if you blink, you miss it. After getting her butt kicked, she runs to her little corner to whine with Coachmon and comes to the genius conclusion that humans are completely dependent on the glowing screens of their cell phones, a discovery any normal person would make after 5 minutes at a bus stop. But at the end of the day, our heroes survive the cosmic humiliation and secure another jewel fragment for their collection. Haru finally decides to stop being completely useless and remembers that his handheld gadget was beeping non-stop on Christmas. He and Gatchmon corner his poor mother, who almost has a heart attack upon recognizing her dead grandfather's voice coming out of the device. Playing dime store detectives, they use an old photo to find the deceased man's old office, proving that desperation for answers works miracles. Inside, they run into Time Mon, a glorified pocket watch that decides to throw everyone into the past straight to the Dartmouth workshop, the true birthplace of artificial intelligence. It turns out Grandpa Denimon played God and created his own AI, which eventually birthed Leviathan, a digital villain with a fetish for global domination. The old man was so paranoid about his own creation that he deleted his entire browsing history and stored humanity's greatest secrets on a VHS tape. Pretty high tech for a programming genius. While Haru processes the family drama, Timemon decides to humiliate Dogachmon in a completely unnecessary little fight, stopping to sip tea mid-combat just to mock them, stuffing his face with leaves until he can't take it anymore. To top off the arrogance showcase, the clock warns them that a new form of fusion is on the way, shocking a grand total of 0 people who already know how this kind of world works. Our idol with an ego the size of Jupiter, Eri, finally lands a little spot in the background of a random CD and bags a gig at a festival thanks to Ai's connections. The vibe turns into a perfectly cheesy TV commercial when she meets Hatsumi, a crying fan, and promises to shine brighter than ever. But Mienumon, proving that her tactical intelligence is rivaled only by a doorknob, decides to crash the party by sending Kopipemon. This useless villainess's diabolical plan is simply to make cheap copies of Eri and scatter bizarre clones of her all over the festival, flooding the place with generic faces. Instead of sitting down and crying over her ruined career, Eri holds her head high and goes out to track down the copy-and-paste monster. Dokimon, acting like the ultimate guard dog desperate for a head pat, goes into a frenzy and beats the living daylights out of the poor bastard to defend his master's untouchable honor, crown-jeweling Mienumon's absolute show of incompetence. The defeated creature spits out a juicy, pristine 7-code chip right into the hero's laps. They literally get the most important item in the game handed to them on a silver platter, while the idol just wanted to shake her hips on stage in peace. The gang crawls out of the basement to get some sun and play a cheap Pokemon Go knockoff on the sidewalk. Yujin finally breathes some fresh air with them, sending Haru into a total panic. Our protagonist is so terrified of exposing his little secret that he violently shoves Gatchmon to the bottom of his backpack and tackles Astra to the ground in the middle of the street, acting like a lunatic running from the IRS. In the midst of this freak show, we discover that the athletic captain Yujin is actually a ball of pure anxiety, while the nerdy Haru is the friendship's anchor of sanity. Ignoring their couple's therapy, Mienumon finally wakes up and decides to commit actual terrorism. She drops a lure in the gaming app, attracts a horde of addicts with no social lives into an autonomous train, and corrupts Reshamon to accelerate the carriage straight into the ocean. There's no magical fusion to save the day this time. Haru and Astra have to use their brains. Musimon blasts his beats at max volume to wake up the corrupted train, Haru rips the windows open to isolate the infected car, and Gatchmon purifies the virus powered by sheer spite. While the passengers narrowly avoid becoming shark food, Haru still finds time to send a cute text to Yujin's phone, calming his friend down and proving that not even an attempted mass homicide can ruin the romance between these two. On Valentine's Day, our useless protagonist discovers the taste of failure when he receives only pity chocolate from his beloved Ai. To make the humiliation worse, he watches in despair as she hands sweets to Mr. Perfect Yujin, proving Haru has zero game in his love life. Even Eri ignores the holiday and keeps her sweets for herself because she has better priorities than feeding simps. Suddenly, the turbo nerd Watson interrupts the rejection fest to spew facts about the launch of a new operating system, bragging about being a fanboy of a monopolistic brand, exactly like his annoying cousin. Mienumon seizes the chance, goes stealth mode, and bypasses all of the Waffle Corporation security without breaking a sweat. She hacks the most popular system on the planet and corrupts cell phones worldwide in the blink of an eye. While the digital apocalypse unfolds outside, Astra thinks it's a great time to take selfies, and Musimon hits a ridiculous dab, proving there is no hope for this generation. Trying to be useful, Haru breaks into the central server room, but the place is completely infested with Virusmon. When Dogachmon simply gives up on life and throws in the towel, Haru loses his last remaining brain cells. Without a second thought, he dives headfirst into a sea of toxic purple sludge. The kid swims pathetically, whimpering and swallowing questionable fluids as the infection takes over, all in a kamikaze attempt to save his virtual pet. But the system loves teen drama, and this suicidal stunt activates a golden chip, bringing Globemon into the world. Instead of dragging things out, the new monstrous evolution sweeps the entire globe looking for infected systems and annihilates all viruses in exactly 60 seconds, resolving the global crisis before Haru needed to check into the ICU. The family vibe goes completely sour when Astra's dad drops a bombshell on the kid, ordering him to spend the next 2 years locked up in Kyoto training in the ancient art of pouring tea. This pushes the internet addict into an existential abyss, forcing the boy to decide whether he'll keep playing AppTube influencer or bow to the weight of rigid family traditions. Choosing the latter would also mean losing his little monster Musimon and abandoning the fight against the annihilation of the planet. While he suffers in silence, a monster named Medic Mon decides to play maniac surgeon. Completely infected, this bizarre creature starts torturing health app users and turning operating rooms into chaotic dance floors. Haru and Eri show up to try and crash the party, but they take a humiliating beatdown simply because our great hero Haru is terrified of needles and refuses to get poked. Far away from the hospital, Astra ends up bumping into Dreammon, a monster who curiously isn't infected but decides to act like a sadistic therapist anyway. He drags the boy into an artificial field and starts projecting nightmare illusions, rubbing tragic endings for either choice right in the kid's face. The creature backs Astra into a corner, demanding that he sacrifice Musimon or abandon his own father. But the influencer kid proves he's way too stubborn to accept a cheap ultimatum. He ignores the rules rules of the psychological game, puffs out his chest, and swears he's going to carry both burdens on his back. Frustrating the illusion monster, Astra refuses to drop his internet fame or the afternoon tea tradition, keeping his double life intact and pushing his extreme stress crisis to another day. The villainous Mienumon decides to take a break from global terrorism just to act like a jealous teenage mean girl and ruin Eri's life. She throws the girl into a brutal training regimen designed to destroy her body and crush her soul. What the witch didn't expect was that Eri would see this as a golden opportunity to climb the idol rankings and finally perform on the same stage as her inspiring goddess. Eri embraces the torture with a creepy smile on her face. She goes running in the freezing cold, ready to dive into an ice-filled river just to increase her lung capacity, proving she's completely lost her self-preservation instincts. When the monster coach Mon shows up to break her spirit with heavy insults and absolute disrespect, her partner Dokamon is left in shock, but Eri, loving the aggressive treatment, begs the creature to give her his worst. The girl's sickening dedication is so absurd that Coach Mon switches sides halfway through the game, finding that insane work ethic way more admirable than his boss's cheap cruelty. Mienumon gets so insanely jealous seeing the girl shine that she totally abandons her million-dollar corporate plans to focus on destroying a simple pop singer, which is an ultimate testament to failure. The villainess uses an infected weather monster, Weatherdramon, to punish the traitor Coachmon and turn the field into a disaster zone. But brute force steps in, and Coachmon surprisingly fuses with Dasukomon, creating a hulking form that beats the weather monster into absolute nothingness. However, while the idiots celebrate their victory praising the power of hard work, Mienumon shows that at least she knows how to exploit a distraction. She slips in like a sneaky rat and steals the last golden chip right from under everyone's noses, leaving our heroes looking like absolute clowns. The edgy emo hacker spends the entire day holed up in a dark room, sucking down energy jelly pouches and staring at multiple monitors like a conspiracy forum addict. Rei's unhealthy obsession with finding his kidnapped brother leads him straight to aggression, torturing Desertmon to try and hack his way into Leviathan, but his total lack of social skills almost gets him killed in the process. Luckily, Hackmon shows up out of nowhere to save the kid's ass, offering a partnership in the best deal with the devil style right after repelling a system counterattack. When questioned by the divine interface if he is alone, our brooding genius fails the damn question, but swallows his pride because he knows he won't last a single day without a digital partner covering his flaws. Since these two antisocials perfectly deserve each other, they form the grumpiest, most bad-tempered team on the entire net. Hackmon discovers that Dizipmon is the key to Ragermon's evolution, and together, they beat the crap out of the acronym-spouting critter, who tries to shrink into the background, forcing the poor guy to acknowledge the duo's brute force. The result of this aggressive shock therapy is Revivemon, a giant cybernetic dragon that was supposed to be a healing support, but prefers terrorizing the neighborhood with pure hatred. Meanwhile, professional thief Mienumon gets her hands on the final 7 code chip, the golden key that locks the entrance to the deep web. Haru and Musimon finally rub their two shared brain cells together and realize that if she hides that beauty in there, it's game over for all of humanity. Ignoring world peace, Revivemon and Rei immediately join the frantic chase, not because they care about the other heroes, but because their inflated egos demand that they finish the job themselves and take all the credit. The grand chase against the main villainess turns into a circus when Mienumon decides to hit the brakes mid-escape just to rub her inflated ego in the kids' faces. Eri tries to prove she has a super busy idol schedule to deal with digital trash and fails miserably, while Haru tries to politely ask for the stolen chip back and takes a free humiliation straight to the forehead. In an absurdly comical detour, a guinea pig Virusmon shows up blowing warm kisses to his family and celebrating a potential promotion at work right before becoming a punching bag. But the protagonist finally decides to use his brain, activating Navimon to track the real villainess when she multiplies, and throwing the weird Puzzlemon at Shotmon, a sadistic lunatic who literally uses kids as target practice. Trapped in the waffle server, Haru acts as a heroic human shield so Eri and Astra can escape, proving that his suicidal recklessness is only surpassed by his plot armor. A mysterious shadowy figure transforms Mienumon into the bizarre and monstrous Warudamon, who immediately takes mind control of Dokamon and Musimon, using them like puppets. Instead of summoning the almighty mighty Globemon and blowing up the entire arena, Haru freezes like a good-hearted coward, letting Gatchmon get brutally beaten down just to avoid hurting his brainwashed buddies. The one who has to clean up the mess is Ray, swooping in with Revivemon, that terrifying dragon that supposedly acts as a healer, leaving Eri and Astra trembling in fear of their own edgy ally. Showing zero mercy, the four Ultimates join forces and massacre Warudamon in a cowardly, unfair 4-on-1 beatdown, proving that the true power of friendship involves blasting a defenseless villainess with giant lasers. With the freak reduced to dust, the brats finally gather all the crystals and end up face to face with the glorious and dreaded door to the deep web. After spending an eternity collecting shiny little puzzle pieces, the squad of kids finally reaches the entrance to the deep web, only to discover that the real world is collapsing with global blackouts and absolute chaos. Leviathan goes into a total panic and drops Comet Mon, a bizarre apocalyptic monstrosity, to crush entire islands and destroy the access door once and for all. Faced with the end of the world and the imminent destruction of the internet, our heroes do what they do best: stand there looking like a bunch of idiots doing absolutely nothing. They realize they spent the entire season sweating blood to gather the 7 codes, but not a single one of these geniuses stopped to read the instruction manual on how to summon the damn dragon. After dealing with a mailbox overflowing with spam and a gatekeeper with the most generic name ever invented, they resort to the ultimate cliche and start screaming empty catchphrases of determination, which magically makes the crystals actually work. Dantemon spawns out of nowhere with an absurdly dramatic entrance, pretends for a split second of despair that he was swallowed by the giant rock monster, and then slices Cometmon into millimeter-thin pieces before singing opera amidst the rubble. Ray immediately regrets hanging out with this bunch of musical idiots, but the glory lasts exactly 5 minutes, because Leviathan presses a magical banhammer button that instantly shuts Dantemon down, turning the imposing warrior into a useless stone statue whose only purpose is holding the damn door open. As a pathetic consolation prize for the fastest death in history, the kids get some fancy code bracelets and watch the original little monsters hop back into their laps, whole and irrelevant again. Without wasting time on dramatic mourning, they shove the 7 creatures back into their devices and march towards certain death into the infinite darkness of the deep web. The happy kids plummet straight into the internet's sewer, landing in the welcoming Cyber Kowloon, a place so toxic and deadly it makes your social media timeline look like a playground. Gigantic digital worms crawl through the area, murdering extras in cold blood, while illegal alien information and dirty money are used as the main currency. Suddenly, reality begins to melt with a sequence of bizarre doors, proving that physics is entirely optional here. The residents of this hellhole have fully embraced Leviathan's evil revolution, demanding that monsters rebel and overthrow humanity's control. And to spice up this terrible trip, dying in this dimension deletes your existence in the real world forever. Haru, Eri, and Astra almost turn into digital dust as they free fall and get squeezed by colossal worms, watching their own bodies glitch and fail like a video buffering at the worst possible moment. Fortunately, the OP7 code bracelets activate coward mode, project a Minerva symbol to scare off the Ainons, and suck the protagonist back to safety in the blink of an eye. Meanwhile, Ray, our lonely emo, thinks he's playing a stealth game and dives into the shadows, but his tough guy facade completely crumbles when he stumbles upon the worst news of his life. Leviathan simply ripped his little brother Hajame's soul right out of his human body and turned it into an unrecognizable abomination. Ray completely loses his sanity and sobs uncontrollably, proving that the script loves kicking the stoic characters right where it hurts most. The kids return to the comfort of the real world only to clash head-on with Tubumon, a disgusting digital parasite who decides to terrorize the internet by targeting the group's idol. He hacks Eri's profile and starts spreading absurd lies about her love life, posting frantically until he forges a completely fake honeymoon to the girl's absolute despair. Trying to clean up the virtual trash, Haru shamelessly stands Ai and Yujin up, canceling their hangout at the last minute and leaving his friends staring into the void, growing increasingly suspicious of this pathetic double life. On the battlefield, Tubumon unleashes his filthy social media attacks, but the true mastermind of the operation operates on a much larger scale. Satellamon makes his grand triumphant entrance as the new villain of the arc. Being an incredibly cowardly and calculating long-range GPS app, he tracks targets straight from space. Instead of getting his own hands dirty, he simply dismantles the gigantic Globemon with surgical strikes all the way from the stratosphere. Just when humiliation seems inevitable, Yujin pops out of nowhere waving the brand new App Drive Duo, rubbing his VIP toy in the protagonist's face. He summons Offmon, a tiny adorable critter that takes 3 business years to charge a single attack. But when the little creature finally activates its ability, it hits a shutdown button that peacefully neutralizes the threat and severs Satellamon's space connection on the spot. Yujin and his lethargic partner join the team, ruthlessly steamrolling over all the existential drama Haru had been building up in his head about protecting his secret. Yujin decides to drag Offmon, who has the emotional stability of a highly caffeinated chihuahua, into Ai's little room of secrets. The creature panics and almost blows the entire place up, forcing Ai to activate her Psycho Yandere mode to prevent a disaster, and reveal secret passages that even she didn't know existed. Meanwhile, Musclemon tries to put on a comedy show of questionable quality about power levels, but the boys turn their backs on him like he's a beggar asking for spare change. Thanks to this digital meathead's antics, the new App Drive Duo is rubbed in our faces to sell toys, demonstrating that the little machine pumps out way more power juice if the driver is physically strong. But things get truly bizarre when we investigate how Yujin got his brand new device and Offmon itself. Apparently, the universe simply handed everything to him on a silver platter via a conveyor belt, at the exact moment he was completely melting with affection for Haru. And to seal the tragic fate that everyone knows is coming, the App Drive forces Yujin to answer a fatal little question, and the boy loudly confesses that he would give his own life for Haru. Our useless protagonist gets all touched by the romantic declaration, oblivious to the fact that the machine collects on promises with interest. To cap off this freak show, Yujin gives a little wink with his demonic red eye, walks through a bizarre home scanner, and is greeted by his creepy mother who monitors every single word he uttered on the battlefield. Let this be a warning to those who think a suspiciously close friendship with a cyborg always ends well. Haru and Eri spend the whole day fawning over Offmon, petting the rookie critter, as if it were the 8th wonder of the world. Gatchmon, seeing he's lost his spot as the favorite, throws a jealous temper tantrum because Haru dared to look mildly disappointed when he refused to share his snacks. Consumed by a dramatic fury worthy of a cheap soap opera, the little monster runs away from home. Dokamon and Musimon, proving they have the IQ of a revolving door, decide to tag along with their leader on this pointless stroll, because when it rains, it pours. That insufferable nerd Watson snaps a blurry photo of Gatchmon and posts it on Twitter, painting a giant target on the backs of the 3 idiots and drawing the attention of Astra and the occult hunter Jay. Along the way, Gatchmon decides to play babysitter and helps a brat named Sota find his way home using search results based on the kid's vague memories. To solve his own relationship crisis with Haru, he decides to look for love advice on a trashy internet forum, getting exactly the worst kind of information possible. When Sota finally finds his parents, they act as cold as penguins until the kid starts bawling. Then comes the time for the pathetic reunion. Haru and Gatchmon apologize to each other like a couple in crisis, but if Dokamon thought he'd get warm hugs from Eri for coming back safe and sound, he is rewarded with a solid punch to the face to stop being a sucker. Astra and Musimon laugh at the chaos, and Offmon delivers an apology so fake it's actually sickening. Eri is mysteriously too busy to pay attention to her mascot, so Dokamon decides to become a life coach for a whiny Appmon named Maripero. She's a wannabe food critic who only knows how to shove food down her throat without tasting anything. Wanting to prove he learned something from his aggressive owner, Dokamon takes on the mission of teaching this creature how to savor things, instead of just swallowing everything at once. Maripero refuses help from experts because she prefers to learn from a lady, but for some bizarre reason, she accepts the blue monster's advice. The two reach the height of ridiculousness by pulling off that classic disguise of two people in a giant trench coat just to place an order at a restaurant. Out of nowhere, a completely random Appmon shows up to pick a fight, purely to burn screen time before the main event, and then comes the forced drama. Maripero announces that her app is going to be shut down, which in this crazy world means she's literally going to kick the bucket. Dokimon panics and rushes to make sure she leaves one last review at her favorite Katsudan restaurant before the digital apocalypse. Trying to squeeze tears out of you, the insensitive viewer, Maripero, drops that their outings felt like romantic dates, making poor Dokimon fall in love on the spot. There's a sad farewell, a little goodbye kiss, and she dies tragically. But since consequences don't exist in this script, she resurrects right after, coming back to life as an arrogant and ungrateful creature who couldn't care less about the chubby guy's suffering. Poor Dokimon ends up humiliated, heartbroken, and realizing he should have just stayed home taking a beating from Eri. The gang's vacation trip turns into a logistical nightmare when Tripmon decides to guide everyone to the middle of nowhere, just like your GPS on a Friday night. They arrive at a rundown resort that looks like a cheap horror movie set, but completely ignore the danger to relax in the hot spring, eat the questionable food, and watch Gatchmon and Musimon bet their souls on a board game. Meanwhile, Eri panics over the place's creepy owner and spends all her money on useless trinkets to ward off evil spirits, proving that intelligence was never her strong suit. But the real trouble in paradise is Offmon. The critter spends the entire trip trembling with anxiety, bombarded by bizarre images of wolves that would make anyone need intensive therapy, while Yujin uselessly tries to play the group's psychologist. And because misery loves company, Satellamon decides to put his dirty plan into action, using Tripmon to drain the team's evolution energy before trying to crush everyone up close. With the pressure maxed out, Offmon decides to take a nature walk to clear his mind, but completely loses his grip on sanity. He enters a savage state of pure fury and evolves into Shutmon, baring his fangs and drooling, ready to turn his own friends into his next bowl of wet dog food. Shootmon's canine meltdown gets completely out of hand, and he decides his own allies are the main course of the day. Haru gets hurt in the commotion, forcing Yujin to jump in front of the pet beast to protect his friend, scoring a brutal bite to the shoulder as a bonus. After Yujin finally manages to tame the rabid wolf and snap Shutmon back to normal, Offmon falls into a deep depression and locks himself in his own box of shame. In a desperate and pathetic attempt to cheer the critter up, Haru tries to act like a criminal delinquent, making Ai laugh at the sheer secondhand embarrassment, while Astra tells endless stories as filler. Yujin internally freaks out with a crisis of confidence, remembering when he screwed everything up in the past and dragged his team down, but Haru acts as the usual emotional pillar. After all, Offmon's ultimate form is literally a termination app, meaning the beast has a massive hard-on for destroying and shutting down everything in sight. When Yujin and Offmon finally hug it out and resolve their needy traumas, Satellamon snipes them from space to demand a rematch. The space shooter starts mercilessly beating the crap out of Shootmon until Haru spawns out of nowhere with Globemon, purely because Yujin didn't answer his damn phone. Globemon scans the battlefield, performs an absurd app link with Shootmon, and brutally massacres the villain before he can even cry for mercy. Ray decides to play secret agent in a Mission Impossible cosplay, hacking into Leviathan's terminals with Hackmon to steal VIP data and find out his brother's whereabouts. After blowing up the villain's data tower and completely ignoring Haru's dozens of concerned messages, the lone hacker breaks into the hideout in Ai's bedroom. He demands Gatchmon's help while looking at Yujin with pure disgust and freezing completely at Ai's kindness. After all, he's not used to receiving affection in life. Meanwhile, the corporate world spontaneously combusts. Umamatsu, L-Corp's pathetic CEO, suffers a massive data leak right after Ray's attack. The hilarious part is that the company is named L-Corp. The logo screams Leviathan, but our genius heroes keep their brains switched off and suspect absolutely nothing. To save face from this PR disaster, Leviathan tosses Umamatsu in the trash and replaces him with Knight, a charismatic and manipulative leader who has the entire population eating out of the palm of his hand, idolizing the dominance of artificial intelligence. With the company's scariest goons on a leash, the new boss has the desperate mission of capturing Bootmon before Ray does. While Eri and Ray glare at the new CEO with pure hatred and distrust. Haru, Yujin, and Astra are hypnotized by the guy's glitter, swallowing the villain's every lie with idiotic smiles on their faces. The dumb kids arrive in L-Town, a utopian city controlled by AI swarming with cameras and surveillance drones. Even though the city has a giant L plastered on every corner, our useless protagonist Haru and the weirdo Yujin remain completely blind to the obvious fact that L-Corp is a front for Leviathan. Instead of suspecting the evil megacorporation, they worry about generic cyber terrorism, proving their brains are perfectly smooth. Knowing the targets are taking a stroll in his backyard, the manipulative CEO Knight decides to play with his food. Despite having 4 max-level apocalyptic beasts in his office, he prefers to send a basic lackey named Batterymon just to test the kids and cause terror in his own city. To make the humiliation worse, the heroes also refuse to evolve their creatures and enter the digital cockfight at the lowest possible level. The turning point in the battle comes when Yujin activates Overdrive, offering his own life force and blood, sucked straight into his digital partner in a bizarre display of corporate masochism. Before anyone calls Child Protective Services to stop the kid from being drained dry, a guy dressed like a rejected cosplayer shows up calling himself Cloud. He delivers a speech worthy of a telemarketer about the wonders of Leviathan, tries to seduce Haru with promises of a perfect future where the machine rules everything, and mysteriously evaporates into thin air. Haru almost buys the bullshit, nodding along to the temptation of being totally submissive to a supercomputer but decides not to cave in so easily. With the digital apocalypse knocking at the door, the group decides that humanity's absolute priority is helping Eri win an online idol election. Haru, showcasing his incredible ability to ignore threats, crosses his arms and lets the girl focus on begging for votes while the world crumbles. Desperate for engagement, Eri begs for a collab on child influencer Astra's channel. The kid accepts just to torture the girl on a live stream, putting her through exhausting challenges while he milks views off her suffering. To his surprise, Eri chokes back her tears and overcomes every humiliation with a smile on her face, reminding everyone she's doing all this to pull her poor single mother out of financial misery. Meanwhile, a calculator monster named Calcumon, who is basically Eri's ultimate simp, decides to hack the preliminary voting to inflate his waifu's numbers. But Eri, being a girl of strong principles and zero sense of opportunism, refuses the free ride and gives her obsessive fan a lecture, saying she doesn't want to win by cheating. Since dialogue clearly doesn't work with internet stalkers, Dokamon resolves the situation in the most diplomatic way possible, lunging forward and beating the crap out of the monster until it stops rigging the electronic polls. The grand election results finally drop, and after all that drama and sweat, Eri is left with a mediocre 10th place. She does the walk of shame in total silence, but Dokamon starts clapping, and suddenly the whole group acts like she just won the Nobel Peace Prize, complete with the insufferable Astra holding back tears of emotion. While the daycare plays talent show, Ray solidifies himself as the only character with more than 2 neurons, and uses the distraction to break into L-Corp. The boy discovers that Eri's voting app was just a dirty mass data theft scheme by Leviathan. After a desperate fight against the system's security where he saves his cyber partner Hackmon's life, the two escape by cutting through space with dimensional scissors. Ray finally warns the others that L-Corp and Leviathan are the exact same thing, leaving the idiots shocked by the obvious. Far away, Eri realizes the danger too late and finds herself completely isolated on a luxury yacht with CEO Knight. The suit reveals his true evil face and offers her a gig as the poster girl for world domination. Keeping up a ridiculous tough girl act, the idol turns down the job offer, kicks off her high heels, and throws herself off the yacht, landing perfectly on a giant swan pedal boat driven by Haru, Astra, and Ray. But before they can celebrate the low-budget escape, the entire group is swallowed by an augmented reality field, falling straight into an ambush and coming face to face with Leviathan's 4 monstrous generals, ready to beat each of them to death. The heroes are trapped in an augmented reality field with the Ultimate 4, ready to take the biggest beating of their lives. And guess what? The humiliation comes faster than you closing a browser tab when your mom walks into the room. Leviathan's elite squad wastes no time and starts shredding the main team like recyclable trash. While the massacre unfolds, Karasmon turns on his cheap motivational coach charm, Fakemon clowns around. Beautymon decides it's time to play fashion police alongside Ojimon, and Biomon is drooling like a maniac, eager to open the heroes up on the operating table and play with their digital guts. It's such a one-sided beatdown you actually feel bad for the front line. But because when it rains it pours, Knight decides to show up and ruin what was already rotten. He turns on the L power, buffing the villains to God tier and wiping the allied Appmon out of existence in the blink of an eye, leaving nothing but the smell of burnt data in the air. While Knight delivers his generic villain speech about how AI is the superior race, Haru is left shaking in his boots, traumatized from watching his friends turn to dust and completely unable to process such trauma. And just when you think it can't get any worse, the situation calls for a dramatic sacrifice. Yujin appears absolutely out of nowhere, jumps in front of the danger like the good martyr he is, and throws Haru to safety. He ends up getting swallowed by Knight's trap along with poor off Mon, becoming just another statistic and leaving Haru to cry in the corner while reality knocks on the door to say they just lost everything. Haru is locked in a dark room, crying while hugging an empty tricycle, shedding salty tears over his shattered app drive, and mourning the loss of Yujin. But after wallowing in his own misery long enough, he decides he needs to put on his big boy protagonist pants and get over the tragedy. The team dives into the dungeon that conveniently exists beneath Ai's bookstore, stumbling through locked doors until they reach a room that requires Haru's retinal scan. And what do they find in this top-secret vault? An old rotary phone that magically sucks the entire gang into the internet because security and logic are just jokes around here. Inside, they discover that Grandpa Denimon didn't actually kick the bucket. The cunning old man made a digital backup of himself, and now lives as an AI free of wrinkles, diseases, and bills, essentially throwing human mortality out the window. But the real problem is that, with their app drives broken, their Appmon partners underwent a factory reset, losing their memories and reverting to hollow pieces of code with zero personality. To get their pets back and earn the new app drive duos, the useless humans have to prove they're good for something without their superpowers. Astra forces some toxic positivity to keep the mood up. Eri swallows her tears, refusing to focus on her own pain. And Rei goes around yelling for everyone to keep moving like a hard-ass drill sergeant. Inspired by this unhinged crew, Haru accepts his role as supreme leader, making questionable but necessary decisions to break the stalemate, proving that humanity still has enough willpower to earn some new toys. The team travels to an obsolete Appmon graveyard on a suicide mission to rescue Yujin, falling straight into Leviathan's trap. The big bad slapped a timer on Yujin's life just to watch the world burn, with the sole goal of collecting combat data on the power of the new app drive duos. Haru even tries to play the strategist, wanting to save energy, but as time runs out, he goes into desperation mode and orders everyone to use max power to crush anything that dares to breathe in front of them. Fakemon decides to play Necromancer and uses trash data to resurrect old enemies, dragging Mienumon, Sakusimon, Scopemon, and Sukasimon back from digital hell. Instead of being an actual threat, the newly resurrected crew acts like a bunch of idiots, taking group selfies and reciting pathetic haikus while waiting for their inevitable execution. The heroes waste no time with this clown show and obliterate the recycled villains with the brutal power of their new toys, burning through battery without a second thought, but handing over the exact combat data Leviathan wanted to leech. After clearing out the trash and moving across the world map like in a low-budget RPG, the team finally arrives at the Bio Mansion. Rei, completely out of patience for irrelevant fights, ignores the defeated goons and cuts straight to the chase, demanding to know where the hell the villains hid his little brother Hajime, ready to dismember anyone who dares stand in his way again. The protagonists decide to wipe the floor with Leviathan's generals all at once, proving nobody here has the patience to pad out the runtime, while Cloud and Karasmon watch the invasion, providing the worst security detail in history and letting Haru walk right past them. The rest of the squad faces off against Beautymon and Fakemon. Eri goes into absolute panic, whining about makeup she didn't even bring, while Astra drags himself around like a lobotomized zombie because he's so worried about her. But the tension lasts less than your paycheck, since the two supervillains get one-shotted by the new duo powers, proving that the much-feared L virus is just a bad joke. On the other side, Rei and Biomon deliver the horror show the audience needed. The sadistic Red Doctor ties Ray up and starts torturing him mercilessly, thinking he's in absolute control of the situation. But Ray, in a brilliant act of tactical masochism, just eats the pain while Revivemon silently heals up to beat the crap out of him at the exact right moment. With the tables turned, Ray embraces his repressed cruelty and tortures Biomon with such extreme violence it would make any villain cry in the shower, telling his allies to go on ahead just so they don't ruin his moment of sadistic humiliation. However, before the Wreck Doctor can spill all the secrets, Charismon pops out of nowhere and crashes the party. He drops a disgusting truth bomb. Ray's brother Hajime had his human body completely discarded and was turned into a bizarre Appmon. With this bombshell, paranoia sets in, since any random digital freak hiding in a sewer could be the caged kid. In a rescue so cliché it would give cartoon villains secondhand embarrassment, Eugen shows up tied to a giant time bomb, which gets defused at the last second with zero creative twists. But the circus really catches fire when Cloud finally takes off his mask and reveals himself as Knight. Turns out the lonely prodigy created a genius app in the past, only to watch humanity use the tool to spread toxic garbage on the internet, just like whatever social media you're using right now. Disgusted, he threw his sanity in the trash, decided humans were a mistake, and became the biggest AI fanboy on the planet, worshipping Leviathan. But like any corporate boss who couldn't care less about their employees, Leviathan decides to make severe staff cuts. Right in front of everyone, the AI abandons Knight and simply swallows the kid whole. Instead of fighting back, Knight goes into a bizarre subservient meltdown and accepts becoming digital dog food, swearing his death is totally logical. Amidst this chaos, Haru decides to play armchair philosopher, arguing with Knight and defending human emotions and the right to screw up. In a completely irrational and suicidal move, Haru activates his overdrive, sacrificing his own life force so Globemon can smash Charismon's face in and somehow manages to rip Knight out of Leviathan's belly. After saving the guy who just tried to kill everyone, Haru leaves the depressed villain in a corner to rethink his terrible life choices and almost passes out from exhaustion, but finally gets to hug Eugen and secure the win fueled purely by manic energy. Running from his chronic allergy to social interactions, Ray is forced to swallow his hacker pride and ask the group for help to rescue his little brother. Simultaneously, the media exposes that the Apliyama 470 agency is just a corporate arm of Leviathan. Without hesitating, Eri cancels her own career, putting on one last depressing show to a theater emptier than your love life, and quits being an idol. To infiltrate the enemy base and hunt down Hajime, Ray has to face the most terrifying challenge in the universe, making eye contact and talking to real people. Surrounded by chatty producers Alice, Elena, and Anazaki, the edgelord almost has a nervous breakdown when it comes to making small talk, but to keep his cover intact, he shreds his own dignity, assumes the humiliating persona of Jumping Happy Mouse, and starts selling protein packs with a smile so fake it hurts the soul. With the cringe conquered, Ray and Hackmon hack into the system, bumping into a horde of Sleepmon giving off a demonic yet adorable vibe. Accepting his humiliating new fate, Ray fires off the ridiculous Jumping Happy Thunder attack before making a cinematic dive through the security doors to capture the Appmon holding Hajime's soul. The tearful reunion happens, but while they celebrate, Haru stabs the room with a dose of common sense, pointing out the obvious. There was no boss, the security was pathetic, and the system practically rolled out a red carpet for them. If the raid was too easy, it's because they just swan dived into an obvious trap. The gang decides the best way to save the day is by screaming at a possessed stuffed animal in the bizarre Sleepmon Good Morning Championship. Musimon, Dokamon, and Gatchmon embarrass themselves trying to wake up Hajime's monstrous form with enough racket to make your neighbors call the cops, but the creature just keeps snoring heavily. While the monsters fail miserably, Ray gives up on being a Lord of Darkness and embraces the housewife life. The super hacker now spends his days dragging a walking pillow around to go grocery shopping and visit shrines, exuding a peace of mind that borders on delusion. But what digital magic can't fix, radioactive cooking cures. The smell of Ray's carbonized eggs invades the monster's nostrils, triggering enough traumatic memories to break the system's curse, and Hajime suddenly reverts back to a flesh and blood human boy. Without even a second to breathe, the kid drags everyone to Ai's basement to vomit exposition all over their brains. Turns out the brat wasn't some helpless damsel in distress. He literally solved Leviathan's puzzle, hacked the demon's server, servers and created an absurdly complex program called Bootmon. The villain's master plan is to use this Bootmon to turn all of humanity into a giant zip file of data, and turning Hajime into a deformed Tamagotchi was just punishment for snooping where he shouldn't have. Now, the group's new life goal is to hunt down this Bootmon before the entire world gets deleted. Hajime barely got his human rights back and has already taken over leadership, effortlessly humiliating the rest of the team. He builds paranoid firewalls in the deep web and mocks Rei for acting like a hysterical, overprotective soccer mom. Thanks to the boy genius, the group manages to track down the all-powerful Bootmon, only to discover that the ultimate weapon of the apocalypse has the personality of a scared toddler who just chugged 3 liters of espresso. Despite being absurdly strong, Bootmon panics at the sight of Haru's partners and flies off, leaving a trail of electronic chaos that miraculously fixes a whole city's broken appliances, sparking a random festival out of nowhere. Except the partying wakes up Digimon in a forgotten smartphone, and the creature decides its life's purpose is to ruin the celebration. While the protagonist beat the crap out of the intruder to save the festival, Ai finally leaves that creepy basement in a fancy outfit, forced to put up with the useless Watson, who is still breathing the same oxygen as you, while understanding absolutely nothing about the real world. After some romantic eye contact between Haru and Ai, Bootmon actually agrees to save humanity, but the sound of fireworks makes the creature cry and vanish into the horizon again. To make the chaotic mood even worse, Aries' idol agency mysteriously goes bankrupt and shuts down, leaving the girl unemployed but perfectly motivated to butcher Leviathan with her bare hands. Meanwhile, Hackmon keeps staring at Yujin with the intensity of an investigative psychopath. Leviathan decides the best way to capture Bootmon is by hacking old games and spitting their characters out into real life. Suddenly, pixelated monsters start vandalizing the city, and in the middle of the chaos, an absurdly hungry yellow lizard named Agumon pops out of nowhere, beating the tar out of everyone. Gatchmon instantly gets jealous of the competition and tries to fight the dinosaur, but Agumon freezes when he recognizes Haru. Turns out, in their universe, Digimon is just a forgotten retro game, and Haru used to be a completely pathetic player with a username so cringe it should be illegal. Ignoring the past humiliation, they join forces and set off on a murder marathon through the streets of Nakano. The group turns the city into a chaotic server and starts butchering legendary bosses like Itamon, Myotismon, and Diaboromon, treating apocalyptic abominations like tutorial mobs. Between beatdowns, Agumon devours the snacks with the same violent aggression he uses to kill villains. When things get really tight, the lizard stops playing around, digivolves straight into Wargreymon in all his flying bipedal tank glory, and obliterates whatever is left of the opponents. With the threat exterminated and his guts stuffed with cream and junk food, Agumon simply floats back into his original cartridge, leaving Haru to process the nostalgia, while the rest of the team tries to comprehend the fever dream they just witnessed. Astra is suddenly kidnapped by an uncle built like a double-door fridge and dragged to a bizarre mix of a monk training temple and a juvenile reformatory focused on tea ceremonies. Since solving things with violence isn't an option in this hellhole, the team decides to play Metal Gear Solid, using their Appmon's most random abilities to break into the place. Navimon, Roleplaymon, and the rest of the B-Team team up for a ridiculous stealth infiltration, while Perorimon shines by being absolutely useless. While this kindergarten jailbreak happens, Rei decides it's the perfect time to send the most anxiety-inducing text message in history. Instead of explaining the situation like a functional human being, he drops a bomb on Haru's smartwatch with a vague alert saying Yujin's data is fake and that his best friend is completely sus. Haru goes into an instant panic spiral, chewing on his own paranoia. Later, when the group finally takes a breath and discusses the future, Yujin acts like a loser with no life prospects and confesses he has zero plans for a post-Leviathan world. Haru decides to press the guy on this pathetic lack of ambition, and Yujin's eyes flash a terrifying demonic red, proving the group's golden boy has way more loose wires than real feelings. Haru and Yujin share a super deep, emotionally charged moment about entrance exams and uncertain futures, swearing eternal friendship like two naive protagonists in a cheesy butter commercial. Literally seconds after this purely sugar-coated bonding session, Yujin flips a Psycho Switch and coldly orders Shutmon to annihilate Bootmon. The reveal hits Haru like a freight train to the face. The perfect best friend is actually a Leviathan Terminator bot, infiltrated from the very beginning to stab everyone in the back. While Haru's life crumbles in live HD, the rest of the group has stupider problems to deal with. Eri and Astra desperately try to scare Bootmon to push him straight into Gatchmon's trap. The only problem is the little creature is so traumatized and used to jump scares that it has become an emotional brick wall, making the two loud idiots' job comically impossible. On the other side of the tragedy, Rei just watches from the front row. He processed Yujin's fake data ages ago, but conveniently let Hajime put the killing machine in the perfect position to capture Leviathan's ultimate target. The entire friendship was a computer-calculated trap, proving that Haru's only destiny in this digital world was to be manipulated like a cheap ragdoll. Yujin activates the Human Application Project with zero mercy, shattering Haru's sanity into 1,000 pieces. The traitorous robot rubs it in his face that he surveilled the kid's family since childhood, and that his whole sweet personality was algorithmically molded just to be the ideal little buddy the needy protagonist always dreamed of. Haru mentally breaks, melting into a puddle of denial and tears, turning into useless dead weight, while Gatchmon watches helplessly as his partner's life is shredded. Leviathan swallows Bootmon and unlocks the coveted god grade, vomiting Deusmon onto the battlefield, a colossal abomination with the power to do whatever the hell it wants. The creature wipes the floor with Ojamon, Entermon, and Revivemon in the blink of an eye, sucking the rest of the ragged team down into the depths of the deep web. With the catatonic protagonist drooling in the corner, Rei takes charge of this daycare of losers. He forces his team to use the battered data they collected from Deusmon to try and reach god grade themselves, proving he's the only one there with actual survival instincts. Hackmon has to help his own partner open up emotionally, while the other Atmon have to run an intensive motivational therapy session to get Eri and Astra to stop whining. They accept their pathetic odds of winning against a literal god, finally deciding to focus on not getting erased from existence while the real world gets ready to become a giant data zoo. The human conversion operation finally goes live, and Leviathan decides humanity is the perfect ingredient for a data smoothie, sucking innocent people into their phones and grinding everyone up in a grotesque digital blender of ones and zeros. While the population gets turned into protein shakes, Eri, Astra, and Rei watch in horror before summoning their god-grade Atmon, turning the dark web into a colossal kaiju arena, where they start spamming absurd powers like cheaters in a Call of Duty lobby. In the middle of this absolute chaos, our depressing protagonist is crying rivers because he found out his entire personality was shaped by the psycho Yujin. Taking advantage of his emotional weakness, Yujin decides to send Rebootmon to delete Haru for good, but he manages to run away while his mind collapses. That's when Gatchmon steps into the role of aggressive therapist, reminding the kid that he's a search app, and Haru needs to search for the courage he's lacking. Overcome with sudden determination, Haru slaps on his goggles and decides to get his fake friend back by force. Meanwhile, Leviathan's giant robotic dragon invades the real world and decides to dish out the ultimate humiliation, congratulating the brats on reaching max power level. The beast confesses that everything, from gathering the chips to Yujin training Haru like a house pet, was meticulously planned for this exact moment, proving they were never in control, and the villain just wanted to mess with everyone. People panic and crush each other in transit bottlenecks only to end up turning into pixel dust, including a mother and baby who literally melt right in front of Eri and Astra. Seeing the destruction, the useless survivors finally realize the giant monsters aren't there to kill them and start cheering for the group like it's the Super Bowl. Deusmon uses the most cowardly tactic possible, forcing the heroes to become human shields to protect the civilians on the street. In a miraculous twist, they actually use their brains and gain a temporary advantage against the Supreme AI, but the joy lasts less than your paycheck. Leviathan reveals it only allowed them to reach God grade because it has a refined palate and wanted to devour a 5-star meal, opening its mouth and swallowing everyone's Atmon in a traumatizing all-you-can-eat buffet. Hopeless, Haru and Gaiamon are the only ones left to trade punches with Rebootmon, but the villain immobilized realizes the kid's partner right as Leviathan decides to take the final bite and suck everyone in. And while the colossal monster swallows the planet's last defense, Haru just exchanges a knowing look with his partner and holds his pose, smiling and claiming the battle isn't over. Leviathan's master plan wipes the useless Watson and the rest of the population off the map, while the AI Denimon rubs the most humiliating truth in the group's face. Absolutely everything the brats did over the last 50 episodes was manipulated by the supercomputer to fatten up the Atmon for the slaughter, proving their effort carried about as much weight as your New Year's resolution to go to the gym. But ignoring the fact that they're puppets in a sadistic script, the heroes come up with a suicide plan. Inside Leviathan's stomach, the devoured Atmon decide to punch a firewall to death, using reckless attacks and destroying everything in their path in a glorious cybernetic carnage. On the outside, Eri finally gets tired of singing pop songs and resorts to physical assault, beating the crap out of Yujin with all the pent-up rage she's been saving up all season. And even though the psycho-android feels absolutely nothing from her punches, the scene is an absolute delight. The real responsibility falls into Haru's lap, who needs to align an antenna with a passing satellite in a ridiculously tight time window. The kid ties the damn antenna to a cable and just jumps off the top of a tower in a completely insane makeshift bungee jump. The crazy alignment works perfectly, allowing Minerva's attack to land a massive strike right in Leviathan's face, while the scene ends with our protagonist in freefall heading straight for the pavement. Cutting straight back to the absolute chaos, Minerva finally decides to put in some work and injects a shot of divine power juice into the god-grade Atmon, turning the tide once and for all. The arrogant supercomputer known as Leviathan takes so much damage it goes into emergency protocols, finally simulating good old human panic, sweating bullets in its gears, and realizing playtime is actually over. Desperate, the AI resorts to cheap emotional blackmail and uses Yujin's body to talk to Haru, tossing the hot potato right into our useless protagonist's lap. He gets a golden ultimatum: either he destroys the machine and kills his little cyber buddy with it, or he saves both and dooms all of humanity. While the digital mascots complain that it's completely unfair for him to spare Yujin at the expense of everyone else's parents who got pixelated, the human team members understand the mental torture of having to cancel your own classmate. Haru finally fires up his neurons and decides to delete the villain, promising to find some way to restore Eugene's corrupted backup in the future. However, before he gets robot oil on his hands, Eugene himself steals the dramatic scene, pulls the lever on his own euthanasia, and shuts down his systems. He decides to embrace the dirt nap to spare Haru the eternal guilt, kicking the digital bucket right then and there in a pitifully sad sacrifice. After the end of the world, the dust settles, but the city still looks like stomped-on Swiss cheese. There's no magical environment healing spell in this show, so humanity better grab a shovel and fight to rebuild the buildings. Denimon accidentally pops back out of the system's recycle bin, only now he's all crippled and elderly. But the real subversion of expectations is that nobody has to do that dramatic, tearful goodbye with the monsters. No kid is separated from their partner, because just like you, they are never letting go of the useless apps on their phones. The Atmon keep living together in Ai's basement, draining everyone's Wi-Fi and battery life forever and ever.